Hello everyone and welcome to yet another edition of New Reads. Today we will discuss a book by Ashutosh Bhardwaj and the book is titled The Death Script: Dreams and Delusions in Naxal Country. Now this book came out in 2020, that is last year, and this was during the lockdown that it was published. As the title says, this is a book which deals with things that are happening in the Red Corridor or the place called Dandakaranya. Now, to just give a brief introduction about the writer Ashutosh Bhardwaj, he's a journalist. He's also a fiction writer. He's a literary critic in his own right. Now, Ashutosh Bhardwaj, when he worked with the Indian Express, he spent several years at this place called Dandakaranya. Now, Dandakaranya is a region that is spread across 92,200 square kilometers, and it comprises parts of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha. Ashutosh Bhardwaj went there as a reporter for the Indian Express to report on Naxalism, the things that are happening in the so-called Red Corridor of the country. Now, a Red Corridor is a larger term which also, apart from the regions that I earlier mentioned, Andhra, Telangana, Chhattisgarh and Orissa, also encompasses parts of Bihar and Maharashtra. So these are all the Naxal affected or Naxal infested areas, like some part of the media would like to call it. And Ashutosh had spent around 4 years from 2011 to 2015 at Dandakaranya. Now, the kind of stories that he comes out with are stories that we seldom hear. Of course, we do hear things that are happening in Dandakaranya or in the Red Corridor or in Chhattisgarh, which is a hotbed for Naxal activity. But then it will be more about the police and Naxal conflicts, the deaths that are happened there. For instance, as late as April this year, some 25 Jawans, CRPF Jawans, were killed by Naxalites in Bastar, which is a part of Chhattisgarh. But then Ashutosh goes much more deeply, into the whole conflict that is happening there. He goes into the lives of Naxalites. He goes into the purpose why they are there. He goes into their dreams. He portrays their day-to-day life in absolute detail. He goes into the lives of the policemen who are posted there, because it is a very, very challenging post that they have. And he goes into the lives of the Adivasis of that region, the tribals of that region, who are supposed to be the original settlers of those places. But then they have been denied much of their rights as citizens. Rather, they still live outside the so-called mainstream, lives of the country. Now, he starts the whole book with a story of a person called Korsa Jagaram, Korsa Jogaram, I'm sorry, who is just 35 years old. He is a Naxalite. He was a Naxalite. He was a Naxalite for several years. I think for almost 11 years he was a Naxalite. He fought against the police. He was even leading one of the forces. He was head of a platoon of the Naxal forces. But one day he chanced to meet a school teacher in a place within Chhattisgarh, and then he immediately falls in love with her. And the school teacher reciprocates that love, and he called her madam. So somehow he took a fancy on Madam. He wanted to give up his Naxal life and he wanted to become a commoner. And that springs from his desire to lead a normal life. And he marries this school teacher. He comes back to his village, but then she warned him that he should not be going back to his village now, because now he has become a policeman, so he's on the other side of things and he will naturally have enemies. But he doesn't heed to that, and he ultimately goes and tries to settle in his village, but within days he he's killed. He's attacked by his former comrades, among whom is a 14-year-old boy whom he had recruited just a few months back. And that was the boy which struck him first with the weapon. So he is shot, he's stabbed with a knife, and he's killed. So he tells the story of how he was killed and how he dreamt of having a good life, and this is how it ended. So that is the start of the story. And through the whole book, the death script, we see several such narrators coming up. They are trying to tell their own story, but most of these narrators, interestingly, are people who are dead. They are dead Naxals. Now, there is another very touching story that he talks about of a girl who's a 15-year-old girl who is seen many times going around with her goats, grazing her goats in the mountainside. But she is killed one day by the police. And when the postmortem is done, the doctor makes it a point to write in the postmortem report that she's a person who has habitual sexual intercourse. Now, why is that? Why should a person who is dead, and when you're looking at the reasons for her, death, you have to deliberately add the fact that, she's a person who has been having habitual sex. Now, that, Ashutosh, the writer says, is partly to sort of defame the girl itself. Somebody is dead, but then you are defaming her and you are trying to say that she had another aspect to her and another immoral aspect to her, which was totally needless to be mentioned. Now, we don't know even if it's true, even the doctor, because that was added to the postmortem report later. So we don't know whether even if that is the truth. So there are several such narrations, several such stories that brings out the life of the people in these region. On the one side, we have Naxals who believe that you can create a revolution through the barrel of the gun, who feel that they're supporting the rights of the Adivasis. They talk about the Jal, jungle, and Zameen. So that is the water, the jungle, the forest, and the land. So the Naxals say that they are fighting for the rights of Adivasis. They are writing the large corporates who are trying to exploit the lives of these Adivasis. But at the same time, they themselves fall victim to their dreams, because they are unable to really take it much further. So Ashutosh says that when he first came to Dandakaranya, he had hardly seen just one dead body, that was of a close relative. He did not have too many chances to see the dead, but after coming to Dandakaranya and spending days there and years there, what he saw was a procession of dead bodies. And he says that, I could see that the dead bodies were telling me stories. And the whole book is written in such a way that he talks about these, he gives these stories, he does the reporting like a normal, a reporter, a journalist does. And also he includes parts of what one can call his diaries as a footnotes, throughout the book. So there are so many footnotes that you can read into the book. And these footnotes are really a kind of an exploratory journey into himself, into what he is seeing. Now because he is encountering a lot of things that he has never encountered of or heard of in his life before. He is coming face to face with death. He is coming face to face with certain realities that he was never prepared for. So he understands that the views of the world as we see it are extremely limited, and there is really other truths that we need to explore. He's not really taking sides with any particular segment of the kind of people that he's talking about, but somewhere he feels that the voice of the Naxals or the voice of the Adivasis have not been clearly represented, and some of the laws we have framed for supporting the Adivasis, for instance, have not been implemented in the right spirit. If they have been implemented, it wouldn't have been easy for people like the Naxals to really sell, or the Maoists to sell their side of the story to the Adivasis, making them support their cause in many ways. So you have Naxals, you have Naxalites, um, the police, you have the Adivasis, you have the informers, the kind of the villagers who are classified as informers. Sometimes the Naxalites call them informers of the police. Sometimes the police call them the informers. So there are those kinds of people whose lives are also extremely in danger. And it is not only the people who live in who are in danger. It is also people who come from different sides, from other side, into these areas. Their lives are also perpetually in danger. So those of you, or those of us who would like to understand a little more about Naxalism, and I'm sure there are so many books about Naxalism that has been written, but this is a good account of what happens within those areas which are Naxal habitats, you can call them, and you get a journalistic side of things where things are reported, but also you get a kind of a writer's craft getting into the whole story, where he's personalizing it, and where he tries to give a different picture of the things that are happening there. He also says that the Naxals treat women very well. I mean, within their own fold, some 40% of the cadre are women, and they are treated quite well. They are given certain supplements in their food. They are allowed to take more of the so-called ration, and they are also treated very well. And there are marriages that happen within among Naxalites, although the romance side of it is not encouraged too much. Marriages do happen, but then childbirth is not supposed to be a great idea. So they make sure that there are a lot of child preventive methods like vasectomy that is carried out within the Naxal groups, so that there is not too much of procreation that happens. It is only in the notes at the end that Ashutosh goes to mention a little bit about the history of Naxalism in India, which started off somewhere around 1967, and this was in Darjeeling's Naxalbari village. So he goes on to talk about that. He goes on to talk about Charu Majumdar. But it is only recently that the death count has really increased. As on February 2020, there have been 4,337 deaths that have happened in Naxal country because of the constant conflicts between the Naxalites and the police. And this includes some very high profile conflicts and deaths, like Congress leaders V.C. Shukla and Mahendra Karma, who is also supposed to be the architect of the Salwa Judum, which was a kind of a planned action against the Naxalites by mobilizing a lot of youth. But then that is sort of also ended after his death. A lot of things that the center has been trying to do to tackle these forces that are acting against the interests of the so-called interests of the country, um, are also not seem to be on the right track. Several times there's a lot of misjudgment that happens. Now, what is the real solution for uh, countering these? Now, that is an open-ended question, and I think Ashutosh also leaves it open with a suggestion that there needs to be more interaction, more dialogues, and a kind of a humane solution to the troubles of this place called Dandakaranya and the Red Corridor. So that is the book. It's a book you can go through quite easily. The language is quite objective. I found the footnotes a little tedious because sometimes the footnotes, they are not actual footnotes. Sometimes they go even take half of the page. So they are quite elaborate. It could have been, maybe slightly more edited and made more crisp. That is my view. But it's a good read, and I'm sure that the book is not only informative but also makes you really think as to the need for a solution to this huge problem that is happening in India's heartland, which is not being addressed the way probably it should. So that is the book, and I will just read a small part from the beginning because that is something really attractive. And this is a chapter called Dream. This is the first chapter. My madam, that is what I called her. I wanted to have a baby with her. I am a dead man now. Whom will she have a baby with? I don't know. My name is Korsa Joga. It still is. Your name doesn't change after you have been murdered. The police register says Korsa Jogaram, alias Ranjit Madakam, alias Shivaji, notorious Maoist, age 35 years, Gonda tribe. I was murdered 14 days ago, the first day of the year 2015, in district Bijapur, division Bastar, Chhattisgarh state. So this is how the beginning of this book is. I hope you find the book an interesting one and informative, and also helps you ponder over the questions, some of the larger questions that are afflicting our country today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.